Pharmaceutical companies made $21 billion last year from a drug derived from a desert lizard's saliva. The mechanism it uses to control blood sugar, your body already does that naturally. There's a plant that activates the same pathway. It's been used across 3 continents for over 1,000 years. It grows in backyards across America right now, and it costs about $2 in seeds. Let's start with the number that should stop you cold. In 2023, Novo Nordisk, the Danish pharmaceutical company that makes Ozempic and Wegovy, reported profits of over $18 billion. Their profit margin was 34%. That means for every $100 someone spent on Ozempic, $34 was pure profit. The average monthly cost of Ozempic without insurance is between $800 and $1,200. For a drug that most patients need to take indefinitely. Because the moment you stop, the weight comes back, the blood sugar climbs, the metabolic dysfunction returns. That's not a cure, that's a customer. And here's the part that the earnings calls never mention. The biological mechanism that makes Ozempic work, GLP-1 receptor activation, is not something Novo Nordisk invented. It's a pathway your body already uses, a hormone your gut already produces, a signal your cells already know how to receive. They didn't create it. They synthesized a version of it, patented that version, and charged you $1,200 a month for something your biology was already capable of. What they never told you is that certain plants activate the same metabolic pathway, naturally, without injections, without the side effects, and without the monthly bill. That's what this video is about. Before I show you the plant, I need to name who benefits from you not knowing this. The GLP-1 drug market, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, is projected to reach $100 billion annually by 2030. $100 billion. That's not a niche pharmaceutical category anymore. That's one of the most profitable drug classes in the history of medicine. The companies behind these drugs have every financial incentive to ensure that natural alternatives remain unknown, underfunded, and unlabeled as medicine. Here's how that works. To be approved by the FDA as a drug, to be legally prescribed for a medical condition, a compound must go through clinical trials that cost between $1 and $3 billion on average. You can only justify spending $3 billion on clinical trials if you can patent the compound and recoup that investment through exclusive sales. You cannot patent a plant, which means no pharmaceutical company will ever fund the clinical trials needed to get a plant-based compound approved as a drug, no matter how much evidence exists that it works. So the evidence sits in academic journals, peer-reviewed, published, largely ignored by the medical system. And people keep paying $1,200 a month. The plant is called barberry, Berberis vulgaris. It's a thorny shrub that grows wild across North America, Europe, and Central Asia. It has small yellow flowers in spring and bright red berries in fall. Most people who have it in their yard consider it a nuisance. Here's what those people don't know. Inside the roots and bark of barberry is a compound called berberine, a bitter yellow alkaloid that has been used in traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and Native American botanical practice for over 3,000 years, specifically for what we now call metabolic dysfunction, elevated blood sugar, insulin resistance, excess weight. 3,000 years of independent, consistent, cross-cultural use for the exact conditions that Ozempic now treats. And berberine is not alone. Oregon grapefruit, native to the Pacific Northwest, grows beautifully in partial shade, contains some of the highest berberine concentrations of any plant in North America. Golden seal, native to the Appalachian forests, once so valuable that it was nearly harvested to extinction by 1900, is another rich source. Tree turmeric, known in Ayurvedic medicine as darahaldi, has been used specifically for blood sugar regulation for thousands of years in South Asian traditional practice. All of them contain berberine. All of them can be grown at home. All of them will cost you less than $5 to start. Let me explain how berberine actually works, and I promise this won't feel like a biology class. Think of your cells like small engines. To run properly, they need to know when fuel is available, when to burn it, and when to store it. There's a master switch inside every cell that manages this. Scientists call it AMPK. Think of it as the cell's fuel efficiency dial. When AMPK is activated, your body gets better at burning glucose for energy. Your liver produces less excess sugar. Your muscle cells become more sensitive to insulin. Your metabolism starts working the way it's supposed to. Ozempic works through a hormone pathway that eventually turns on this same switch. Berberine activates AMPK directly. Different door, same room. A 2023 meta-analysis published in the journal Frontiers in Pharmacology reviewed 14 clinical trials on berberine and metabolic function. The results showed an average reduction in fasting blood glucose of nearly 20 milligrams per deciliter. Meaningful reductions in HbA1c, the long-term blood sugar marker that doctors use to diagnose and track diabetes, and significant improvements in LDL cholesterol. The researchers noted the outcomes were comparable to first-line pharmaceutical interventions. That study received no pharmaceutical funding. I'll let that sit for a moment. Now here's the part of this story that genuinely unsettled me when I went digging. Berberine's history in Western medicine doesn't begin with a recent study. It begins in 1834, when a French chemist named Pierre-Joseph Pelletier first isolated the compound from barberry root. Pelletier wasn't just any scientist. He was the same man who isolated quinine, the compound that finally gave the world a treatment for malaria. By the late 1800s, berberine preparations were documented in American pharmaceutical references for treating infections, digestive disorders, and, this part is critical, what the text described as disorders of sugar metabolism. Disorders of sugar metabolism. That language is from an 1890 medical reference. They knew. Then, in 1910, the Flexner Report, commissioned by the Carnegie Foundation and funded by John D. Rockefeller's General Education Board, restructured American medicine from the ground up. Medical schools that taught botanical pharmacology lost accreditation. Over half of America's medical schools closed within 20 years. Berberine preparations disappeared from mainstream pharmacies, not because the evidence against them was compelling, because the emerging pharmaceutical industry had discovered something more profitable. A plant you can't patent cannot generate a return on a $3 billion clinical trial investment. So the plant gets forgotten, and a synthetic alternative gets invented, patented, and sold back to you at $1,200 a month. Let's grow it. I'm going to walk you through 3 options based on where you live. Oregon grapefruit is the easiest for most of North America. It grows in zones 5 through 9. It actually prefers partial shade, which means if you have a shady corner of your yard where nothing else thrives, this is your plant. It's low maintenance, drought tolerant once established, and visually beautiful. Dark green, glossy leaves that turn red in winter. Plant in well-draining soil. Water once a week through the first growing season. After that, it largely takes care of itself. You'll see the root system developing berberine concentrations within the first year. Barberry is the most cold, hardy option. Zones 3 through 9, full sun to partial shade, extremely drought tolerant. The thorns mean deer won't touch it, which makes it a genuinely useful border plant. One important note, check your state's invasive species regulations before planting Japanese barberry specifically. European barberry and Native American varieties are problem-free everywhere. Golden seal is the highest berberine concentration of the 3, but it's also the most patient plant on this list. It wants partial to full shade, rich, moist soil with plenty of organic matter. Think forest floor conditions. If you can recreate that, it will reward you generously. If you can't, start with Oregon grapefruit. Harvest for all 3 plants comes from the root bark, the outer yellow layer of the root. You don't need to harvest the whole plant. Take a lateral root from an established plant after its second growing season. Clean it and dry it at low heat, under 100 degrees Fahrenheit, for 48 hours. From dried root bark, you make a decoction. 2 teaspoons of dried root bark, 2 cups of water. Simmer for 20 minutes, then strain. The taste is intensely bitter. That bitterness is the berberine. Add raw honey and get through it. Work with a knowledgeable herbalist or your doctor when adding any new botanical compound to your routine, especially if you're already managing blood sugar with medication. Berberine is potent, that's the point. Treat it accordingly. Here's what I want you to hold on to. Ozempic works. I'm not here to argue with the science behind it. For people in metabolic crisis, it can be genuinely life-changing medicine. But the mechanism it uses, the biological pathway it activates, is not a pharmaceutical invention. It's a natural system. A system that plants have been interacting with for longer than medicine has existed as a profession. What the Flexner report took from us wasn't just remedies. It was a relationship between people and the plants that evolved alongside human biology for millions of years. We traded that relationship for a system that requires a prescription, a pharmacy, and $1,200 a month. You can start taking it back for the cost of a seed packet. That's what this channel is about. The full growing guide is in the description. Soil mix, spacing, harvest timing, and how to prepare the 3 most effective forms for metabolic support. And subscribe. Because next week, we're covering the plant that outperformed antibiotics in 3 separate clinical studies. And the reason your doctor has almost certainly never mentioned it comes down to one thing. There's no patent on it. I'll see you then.